If you could just like move the water bottle,
Yes,
please.
I will do that.
So it's not blocking you. And
Is he okay?
just to, yeah, like maybe for when we're answering questions, we'll just, I guess, raise our voice a little.
Raise our
please.
voices.
Yeah.
Okay, how am I looking?
Period.
Do you want me to sit forward or anything?
Nah, we're all good.
Okay, easy.
Yeah. So, I think we can go for about 32 an hour, depending on how quickly we'd get through the questions. Let me just
We'll talk slower than the quiz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll start it, I guess, 1 hour time. Yeah, okay. Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so can you please, before we get started, introduce yourself, your name, degree, and year?
Yeah, so I'm Serina. I am a third year law and economics student at USU. What else, I guess, is there to say? My campaign slogan is Speak Up with Serina, because I'm very passionate about representing students and facilitating more direct conversations with the student body as well. So that's a bit of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite USU venue on campus?
Great question. So I have recently been frequenting Footbridge a lot. They've got a fantastic matcha, and Rolls and Bowls is really, really good. I had that this morning, actually. So I would really recommend, because I realized a lot of people actually have never been, and I've been putting a lot of people on. So yeah.
Yeah. So why are you running for board?
I'm running for board because, as I think someone who has not been particularly involved deeply in student politics in the past, I think I see a lot of potential for new perspectives and I guess improvement to what the USU is doing at the moment. It's a really, really, I guess, powerful union in terms of its abilities to help students and provide direct services that everyone literally uses every day. I think I've got a lot of great ideas on how those can be improved, so I'm very excited to be campaigning.
Amazing. So you already touched on this earlier during the quiz, but can you give me your top 3 policies?
Yes, I guess I'll pick my top 3 favorite policies. My policies are split into 3 kind of aspects. I'll pick one from each. So the first one is about kind of campus life, and that does involve food as well. One thing I think is really necessary is increasing the accessibility of food in, I guess, from the perspective of things like dietary requirements. Often there are, vegetarianism or cultural needs that aren't as catered to by our current food outlets. That's something I'm passionate about changing. The second part of my policy, I guess, is on student well-being. And so I would really like to work with the university to expand the health services that we currently have available, whether that is the health clinic, so being able to see a GP, or get vaccines far more promptly, and also access a greater amount of mental health support, because as I mentioned to you, the consults are currently capped at 6. The final aspect of my policies is, as an interstate student myself from Canberra, I'm really, really passionate about policies that benefit those interstate international students. Something I'd be really, really interested in facilitating is something like an improved mentorship program, whether that is peer mentoring for international students that share your perspective or share your country or language. I think would be really, really beneficial, because a lot of international students oftentimes struggle to integrate into a lot of social events and things like that in their first years at university, and I would love for everyone to be able to get the benefits of that as early as possible. So yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's a very detailed policy. And
been doing a lot of
thinking. So it's I think a lot of work has gone through in creating those policies that you have. So I was just wondering, just pick any one of them that you just named. How did you come up with this? Was it your idea? Who did you consult or talk to before deciding this was a priority of yours?
Yeah, so all of my policies are things that I personally really care about. So in that aspect, I guess it does come from me, but I obviously can't take all the credit. So as I mentioned before in the quiz, I think, for example, with the health policies that I've come up with, I've had first-hand conversations with a variety of people who, whether they've needed to access it for personal health reasons to get support, or even if it's like you're a physio student and you're about to go on placement and you need a vaccination for that. I think there's so many reasons why students might need to access health services that are convenient on campus. So part of that is those first-hand conversations that I'm so grateful to have had with like a really diverse range of people that have helped me to shape what those policies look like specifically. I guess to give more of an example, it would be like, I think perhaps health services should be expanded. I would maybe ask some people about that and they would share their first-hand experiences, and I would then be able to spotlight exactly how those things can be improved to most benefit people. So I guess that's the thought process. Yeah.
Amazing. So I guess every single year during elections, the students always wonder if the candidates that they're supporting align with their politics. Could you please describe your politics without using the words right-wing, left-wing, progressive, or independent?
Okay, that's a really good way of asking that question, I think. I think in terms of my politics then, I'm someone who is deeply empathetic about a really diverse range of people. I want to see everyone living the best lives they possibly can. And I want to see institutions providing the support that people need to achieve those things. So I believe in making progress towards equality, towards equity and support, and having, I guess, going back to what I said earlier, as much empathy as possible for everyone and what they're going through. That's my politics.
Yeah, it's an amazing answer. Are you a member of any political party?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, are you a member of any faction on campus?
I'm not running as an independent.
Why are you running as an independent?
I guess, as I mentioned earlier, I haven't been involved in the more student politics side of things. So it just so happened that I haven't been, I guess, involved in any political factions. I don't think that at all prevents anyone from being a good candidate, obviously. And so I'm running as an independent because I think that I am able to, I guess, better represent students who vote for me because of my personal values. And I think, I guess I can maybe speak to the benefits of not having to necessarily cater to a factional policy as much, but rather like have more direct consultations with the people who I'm meant to be representing. But again, I think there is obviously really valuable insight that you gain from being in a faction as well. So I think both perspectives are really valuable.
Yeah. Moving on. So speaking of politics, should the USU be more political or less political in your opinion?
So I've actually had a lot of people from different universities ask me what the difference between the USU and the SRC is recently. And I think there's really important roles for both. One thing that I always say when I'm explaining it is that the SRC, I guess in a simplified explanation, handles a lot of student advocacy and politics, and it's really, really important to have those conversations. Whereas the USU handles a more operational side of things in terms of how we cater to students' needs for clubs and societies and food outlets and services. Now, in terms of whether I think the USU should be more political, I think everything is political. I think students care deeply about politics. Everybody, even if they aren't engaged in student politics, has values that they care about. And through that, I think it is important that the USU is representing those interests as well. So obviously the priority should always be making sure that students are getting access to those essential services. Even things like cost of living relief are just inherently incredibly political as well. And so I guess in that vein, the USU rightly is engaged in politics, even if it's not spending time specifically on the advocacy that the SRC perhaps is doing really good work on at the moment.
Yeah. So I guess BDS has been a sustained topic at the recent USU board meetings for the past few months. The current board has declined to adopt BDS. If elected, would you support the USU integrating it? Why or why not?
So, I guess in my personal beliefs, I support a free Palestine. I personally engage in BDS as many aspects of my life as I can. From the USU's perspective, I of course understand the concerns that the current board raises in terms of their, fiduciary duties towards those operations. However, I think my personal belief is that there are many areas where we can support BDS, right? There are many reasonable alternatives, and I think it's really important that we take them because of the way that it really does, is something that the student body cares a lot about. A lot of students on campus have a lot of investment in this issue, something that they're very passionate about. And as a representative body then, I think it's something that we should be reflecting in the corporations that we engage in as well. So in that sense, I definitely would support the USU engaging in more things that align with student values.
Yeah. So at the previous meeting, I believe it was March, an SRC councillor asked whether Coca-Cola's Welcome Fest activation was a paid sponsorship. One of the directors, Executive Director Jane Cole, confirmed it was, but said the USU's commercial arrangements aren't disclosed. So I guess I have two questions. Should USU sponsorship arrangements be publicly disclosed to members? And given Coca-Cola is named in BDS campaigns, would you have signed off on that sponsorship as a board director?
Yeah, I guess there's a variety of reasons why those commercial operations wouldn't be disclosed. And I suppose I'm not as familiar with the specific financial operations. But I do think there's a lot of value in transparency. And so I personally would be in support of increasing those commercial disclosures as much as possible, because obviously it's like student money that goes into the funding those things in the first place. And that's why it's really important to have that transparency. In terms of whether I would have signed off on that, I think from my personal perspective, and especially when it comes to representing students' interests, I would have advocated for considering alternatives that are perhaps not as named in those BDS documents, because I do think that it is something that students are very happy to engage with. There are lots of, for example, beverages that students would love to have instead. But additionally, in order to, make students feel like campus is a safe space and a place that represents their interests and they can feel comfortable in their values as well.
Yeah, all good. So moving on from that, how comfortable are you, let's say, if elected, publicly disagreeing with, let's say, the exec team or fellow board directors? Can you walk me through how would you handle a moment where you think someone is wrong on a public-facing issue?
Yeah, of course. And I think that the point of having elections and having a board is that there's going to be disagreement, and that's how the best ideas or policies often form. And so, of course, I would be really comfortable disagreeing with members of the board. I think that happens all the time. It happens obviously in a respectful manner with open discourse, and we invite people to participate in those conversations. But I do think it's something that I think is important to do. Does that answer your question? I think there may have been a second.
I guess how would you handle a moment where you think someone in the exec or a fellow board director is wrong on a public-facing issue?
Well, I assume that pertains to policy, right? And that's something that would happen within board meetings. It's not something that you should be taking, for example, to social media or to gossip or anything like that. But the point of board meetings is to facilitate those discussions. So I would not be hesitant at all to raise those concerns.
Yeah, okay. So moving on, can you, name one critical thing about how the USU is currently operating?
One critical thing? One downside of how it's currently operating?
Yeah.
Sure. So I think, perhaps I mentioned this earlier, the USU runs a quite significant, cash surplus in its operations. I think it is really important to have sustainability in the way that the USU runs, but there are an insane amount of concerns that students have at the moment regarding things like cost of living that I think should be a priority, and I think we have a lot of bandwidth to be able to fund those operations as well. Things like expanding Food Hub, things like expanding those services that I talked about earlier in terms of health, or even dedicating more resources to advocacy for things like international student concession cards or setting up those programs, I think should be a priority and do fit well within the USU charter as well. So I would personally be advocating for additional spending there.
Yeah. All good. So I guess kind of moving back into what we talked about in the quiz earlier, have you read the 2025-2028 strategic plan?
I have skimmed it. I
Yeah.
will say I haven't read it in detail.
Since I guess you have skimmed it, can you pick one thing in it that you agree with and one thing that you disagree with, and can you tell me why?
One thing that I agree with, the general direction of the strategic plan, I think is something that I support. I think the sustainability initiatives should definitely be supported, followed through with. I think the idea, and I mean that in terms of environmental considerations, not financial sustainability. But actually I do think that in many ways it can be quite conservative in its aspirations. In terms of, for example, those environmental policies or the stance it takes towards the financial operations of the USU, that I think there is lots of space to expand how much we can impact students' lives within that strategic direction. Are you okay, by the way?
Yes, no, all good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess moving on to the next question, I have like a little scenario, and just like tell me how would you go about that situation.
Okay.
So a group of students rocks up to a board meeting and demands you take a position on something that you disagree with completely. They're quite persistent. However, they're not, disrespectful at all. They're just very persistent.
Okay.
How would you handle it?
Okay, well, I think that's something that happens all the time and is completely fine. And I really want to see more students going to board meetings and expressing their opinions. And I just don't think that if there is, as long as there's nothing malicious in terms of those operations or engaged in those conversations, as you said, they're not being disrespectful at all. And I think part of your role as a board director is to be able to handle those difficult discussions. People are going to disagree with you all of the time, but you have to be open-minded towards different perspectives. I don't think it's ever helpful to give, a very corporate non-answer and delay your response and things like that. So you just have to engage with their perspectives. You have to ask them what they want to see change. And you have to have more consultation opportunities so that it's not just one particular particularly engaged group of students perhaps that goes to meetings that gets heard. It's everybody who perhaps doesn't go to the meetings or isn't as involved in the operational side of the USU who still feel encouraged to express what they want or what they need. That is how I would handle that as a broad principle.
Yeah, good answer. So moving on to the next question. You have attended the April board meeting.
I did, yeah.
And you've mentioned that you have been reading a few of the Oniswa write-ups regarding the board meetings. So you were in the room, I believe, for the discussion about the queer portfolios.
I was.
And so, the bins not being changed, stuff like that, on top of similar concerns in the ethnocultural and disability space. If you take on a portfolio that includes an autonomous space, what would be your concrete commitment to the students who use it?
The bare minimum I think a board director should be doing is making sure those communication channels are up and running. And I understand that the current board has had problems with IT in terms of those inboxes, and I think that's something that is, I guess, really hard to avoid. But getting on those things and being proactive. Obviously now we know there have been those problems with communications. I do think I'm getting the easier end of the stick the second time round, in that I will be able to be proactive ahead of time in terms of that communication. But it's things like engaging directly with those communities so that they know who you are and know how to reach you beyond just like an official inbox, for example. Going to those spaces yourself and getting a first-hand perspective on what could be improved or what needs to be maintained is something that I would love to do if I was a portfolio holder of those autonomous spaces.
Yeah. So speaking of the portfolios, if elected, which portfolio or portfolios would you, prefer to have, to take on essentially?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously all portfolios, and I don't just say that to be like very corporate, all portfolios are incredibly interesting to me. I've gotten to be a bit more familiarized with the operations of each individual one. I'd be particularly enthusiastic about the autonomous portfolios like women's, ethnocultural, because I think I can make an impact in terms of my first-hand experience in those spaces as well. But additionally, I think I would be more than happy to be a part of, for example, the college's portfolio. I think there's a lot of good change that we can make in those areas as well. As you may know already, I was at Wesley College for my first 2 years of university, which I think gave me a lot of perspective in terms of the issues that are really controversial at the moment and what can be done to improve the quality of life of all students as well as the people who are living in those colleges as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like something about issues that are controversial at the moment. What's one issue that students at the university are experiencing that you care really, really deeply about?
Of course, I think there is a really, really concerning, occurrence of things like sexual assault on campus, but I guess not in collaboration, but at the same time, things like housing crisis. So I think I really I've been following along with the issues with the Red Zone report as well as the investigation into student accommodation on campus. I will preface that by saying I had a really lovely experience at Wesley College. I think particularly they have a cap on the number of students they accept from Sydney, the metropolitan area. And that means that they have been able to increase things like diversity within that college as well. So I say that because I think there are lots of really important ways that colleges should be more inclusive, that they should be tackling issues like sexual assault on campus. And I think there is so much space for the USU to be engaging in that advocacy that they currently are not. I know Archie has been a part of the sexual assault reporting, new sexual assault reporting initiatives, and I think those are going in a really good direction. But that's something I'm incredibly passionate about. As someone who's lived in those accommodations, I've seen how beneficial they can be, but I've also seen how important it is to, commit to those reforms, how much the USU can do as a part of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, moving on from that, it kind of happens every year on how, board directors during election would be promising a lot of things to do in the board once elected, doing this and that. My question would be, how would you manage or hold yourself accountable to the students who, voted for you and put you up to that position?
Yeah, so in terms of election promises, the very first thing is that, as you mentioned before, I've put an insane amount of thought into my policies. I know exactly how I would want to implement them if I was elected, and I have very clear direction in terms of what outcomes I want to see as a result of that as well. Which means that already I think I'm very, very well placed to ensure that I follow up. Additionally, there are things that I'm personally very passionate about that I would just love to see happen anyways. In terms of accountability to students, I want to be somebody who is reachable, but not just that, right? I don't think it should be on students to reach out to you if they have concerns. I think you should actively create a space where people feel encouraged to reach out to you, or that you are inviting questions and concerns and comments. And I think as a board director, you do have a platform to be able to do that. And I would dedicate, regular amounts of time towards making sure that happens. And not only is that part of my duty, I think, if I was to be elected to board, but I think it would benefit me personally a lot to be able to understand those perspectives. I think it would make my contributions to board, more holistic as well. So that's something I would love to commit to.
Yeah. So speaking about accountability, what does accountability look like to you in terms of being a board member, and let's say you got elected and you ended up taking over a portfolio that has an autonomous space? how would you hold yourself accountable to the people who use it as well?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
in terms of accountability itself, it means that you follow through with your promises. It means that when mistakes happen or delays happen, that you are open to criticism, that you actively and quickly make changes. That's, I guess, in general what it means to me to be accountable, is to make sure that, again, you are someone who is incredibly available and open to criticism and to change. If I was elected and I became the portfolio holder of, portfolio with an autonomous space, I think I mentioned earlier that I would want to be incredibly proactive in ensuring that those spaces are safe and nice to be in, of course. But I guess part of that is, maybe I feel like a broken record here, but being available for people to come to you and ask for those concerns, and also personally engaging in those spaces as well, so that you get to communicate with those communities.
Circling back to what I asked earlier about something that you are critical of the USU, can you name like a current USU policy that you are, I guess, really happy with, or like that you really, really support? And I guess on that, how would you improve on that policy? Yeah.
So something that I would love to talk a bit more about is the sexual assault policy that we're working on at the moment. I think it's going in a great direction. It is so necessary. For example, from my understanding, colleges don't have a mandatory reporting policy for incidents of spiking. And I understand why it might be that way, but I think it's something that needs to change, because it's, I think, very important that as institutions that obviously house students of the university, that the university and the union is aware and involved in those incidents, because we have so much capacity to work towards solutions, but also that we have such a, I guess, responsibility for providing support and providing services as well. So I think I would love to make those reporting standards far more rigorous. And I want to improve people's understanding of them as well, because at the moment they're obviously still in the works. A lot of people may be hesitant or unsure of how to engage with them, and that is something that needs to happen, I think, rather quickly, and I think it's something that is definitely achievable as well. So would love to work towards that in my time.
Yeah. So I think earlier in the quiz, or I believe maybe at the start of the interview, can you tell me more about what is the difference between the SRC and the USU?
Yeah. Sure. So the SRC, the Student Representative Council, engages in a lot of really great political work in terms of student advocacy. They organise rallies, they organise the encampment, they organised a really great free vaccination program recently for flu season. So a lot of really great work being done there. The reason it's different from the USU, so the union handles a lot of operational, I guess, student life kinds of provision of services. They handle things like food outlets and clubs and societies, and a lot of those social events at Manning and those kinds of programs. So I think the ways in which they help students are quite distinct in terms of the way the SRC does more political advocacy, whereas the USU does more operational functions.
Yeah. I guess kind of moving on. So I believe 7 out of the 11 candidates this year are studying law. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is?
Yeah.
I guess as a law and economics student, I think a lot of people who choose to study a law degree are perhaps people who tend to be politically engaged. I think they tend to have inclinations towards policy, and it's very common that a lot of the time when you study law, you don't end up practicing law. You might go into government work or policy work, and I think that aligns a lot with those interests. Something else that I guess this is particularly speculative, but as a member of the Sydney University Law Society, that is, from my understanding, the largest society on campus, and there are lots of initiatives that make it so that students are on campus, engaging with those communities and feeling like they belong. And I think that probably has a really large impact into how students feel empowered to engage in things like the SRC or the USU as well. And the reason I bring that up is because I think it's so important that clubs and societies serve that role, or mentoring programs serve that role. And I would love to see a greater diversity in terms of the degrees or the interests of people who are getting involved with board. And part of that is we can implement those services that bring students onto campus, that get students to know people from different degrees and different communities. And I think that's what empowers people to feel like they can run and they can campaign for board and they can have really great ideas for those policies.
Yeah, and I guess staying within that topic, I've heard from quite a few students that having 7 out of the 11 candidates being law students aren't really particularly representative of the broader student body. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, so I definitely understand. The way I would respond is I would explain that the way, I guess, the law degree works at USU is that you have to pick a double degree, right? And in the first 3 years of your degree, you actually primarily do the second degree that you're involved in. And that's why, for example, a lot of law students will be really, really involved. For example, I do economics, so Econ Society or other clubs and societies, like I'm a part of debating and things like that. So I guess what I would say is, obviously you have really balanced perspectives from your second degree, which is arguably your primary degree in your first 3 years. But also the way that we engage with students isn't just through our degrees, it's through, and so all of the candidates are obviously incredibly qualified and engaged on campus. They engage in clubs and societies that make it so they understand student perspectives beyond just the degree that they're studying or the tutorial that they go to on Thursday. I guess that's my response to that question.
Yeah. And I guess whilst talking within representing the student body, why do you think you are the candidate to be representing a lot of students and the broader students at the university?
Yeah, of course. So I think I have a very diverse perspective, and that isn't just from personal experience, that's from the way that I engage with, I guess, the world and others around me. I pride myself on being well-read, staying in the know on issues that people care about, but also I love people. So I love getting to know new people, making new friends, and it is something that I really enjoy, to understand their perspectives or whatever they might be struggling with. And as we've talked about earlier, that's something that has influenced a lot of my policies as well. So the reason I think I would be a good representative is the way that I'm so involved with a variety of different communities and groups on campus, the way that I've engaged with a variety of different perspectives, but also the way that I'm someone who, even if perhaps we haven't met or I haven't, been involved in your society, someone who's really keen to get to know you and to understand what you care about, make new friends, and be a representative in that really, really direct way.
Yeah. And lastly on this topic, as one of the 7 law students running, what differentiates you from the other 6?
Yes, I think everybody who's running, of course, out of the 7 law students actually are quite distinct. We have a really big representation across factions and independents, and where people might be from, if from in high school and things like that. But beyond those kind of really, I guess, basic demographic factors, I think I do hold a unique perspective as a woman of color, as an interstate student who does have that, I guess, unique approach towards my involvement in campus life. So I think, for example, being able to represent the perspective of women and gender diverse students, which is oftentimes underrepresented in political discussions or in advocacy, as well as I think my perspective as someone who isn't incredibly involved in student politics, something I care about and support, but I think I do bring a diverse perspective as someone who might not already understand every motion that's being put forward by the SRC and understand what perhaps students need to be encouraged to get more involved on campus, rather than maybe a group of students who is already particularly engaged in really good ways.
Yeah, amazing. So I guess moving on from that, let's say I am a student who is just, let's say, like politically disengaged with like whatever stuff is happening around campus. I'm kind of just here doing whatever. And let's say it's now campaigning season.
Yeah.
How would you approach me and talk to me and pitch yourself?
Yeah, so what I think, the position that I come from is that if you've chosen to come to university and if you're even studying on campus in the first place, you want to be involved in uni life. You probably have friends who you love to hang out with, whatever that might be. And so I think the approach that I would take is to help understand what the USU does and how everybody engages with it, every single day. I would begin by talking about things like food venues. I would talk about clubs and societies, and I would seek to understand what that particular student was interested in and how the USU can support them. So maybe, for example, I met someone yesterday who was interested in cubing, like Rubik's cubing, which is really cool. And we had a conversation about how they could start a cubing society. And that is how I would seek to really connect with each individual voter, right, from a really personal perspective, helping them understand how they can get the most out of campus life, I think would be the approach I take, rather than just focusing on what's great about me or what I can do.
So a few more questions and then we should be wrapping up. But as you already know, there are 5 students will be elected in total. Which other 4 candidates would you want to work with on the board and why?
That's a hard question. I think everyone who's running is really committed, as evidenced by the fact that they're running in the first place. And everyone has really great policies that I'm super inspired by. So I think it genuinely be really, really hard to pin down for other people only. I suppose, that is so hard. I think I share similar, values to a lot of the candidates. I think Will McCarthy is a close friend from debating. He's also a law student, but that's not where I know him from. I think he's got some great ideas that I would love to see implemented on board. I would love to work with, Borhau, who I think is running as a candidate with Penta, and he, I think, has really great ideas on how to support international students, how to make the USU better. I think I saw Nabila's campaign quite closely last year, and I was very inspired by a lot of her ideas on the environment and on equity, and I think those are things I would love to see happen on board. And oh gosh, it's so hard to pick just one more person, right? Well, I suppose I would love to see Zayed or James on board as well. Obviously, good friends in the same degree as well, and I think I've had some good conversations with them about their campaigns. So yeah, it would be really good, but insanely hard to pin it down for sure. Like anyone on board, I would love to see. Yeah.
And on that, who do you see is your, strongest competition in this race?
My strongest competition in this race? Gosh, I guess maybe that's the unstrategic take to take in terms of campaigning, but I don't know that I see anyone as like my direct competition. In fact, I guess at this stage in campaigning as well, a lot of people are thinking about preference deals and who they want to see on board rather than who they are competing with. So I guess I haven't really put a lot of thought into that. What I really care about is getting people on board who I think align with students' interests, who maybe would represent the values of students as well, and people who are very dedicated to the position rather than, wanting to run for board for other reasons like prestige or things like that.
Yeah. And before we move on to, the lighter stuff of the interview, why should a student vote for you?
Why should a student vote for me? So you can look obviously at my policies that will be uploaded onto the USU website. that is, I guess, the face value of why someone should vote for me. But deeper, I think, is that I genuinely have come up with really actionable ways that I can improve students' lives. I will literally go to King Street and bargain with those food vendors myself if that's what it takes to get student, discounts for restaurants on Broadway or restaurants on King Street. I will personally go and see through those policies, and I think that's a lot of students are jaded by that, right? They see all these great, election promises and then they never come into fruition. And I've also personally seen that happen for the past few years as well. So I think vote for me if you want campus to tangibly improve, if you want to feel inspired every day by the things that are happening and changing on campus. And I think you should vote for me if you want to feel like campus is a place that represents your values, that is safer, and where you feel like you want to be every day and you want to speak up with Serina. Yeah.
Amazing. So, speak up with Serina is your slogan.
That's right.
Yeah. How did you come up with that, and what is the, message or reason behind it?
Yeah, so I guess there was a long list of draft options. The main reason I chose Speak Up with Serina is in terms of the consultation values that I really care about a lot in this campaign. I am really trying with my policies to help as many students as possible rather than just try to target one demographic. And the part of what enables that is if students feel empowered to speak up. If they feel like they can go to board meetings, or they can send us emails, or they can track me down in person, and I would love to have a conversation, because that form of advocacy is so important, so that the voices of students who perhaps aren't insanely engaged on campus do feel like they can be heard and can see that their suggestions are genuinely being actioned. That's how you get the best ideas. You get, economies of scale in terms of how many people are giving you suggestions. And that's something I really care about, is that advocacy perspective. So would love for more people to speak up.
Yeah. What is your campaign colour?
My campaign colour this year is going to be royal blue.
Royal blue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I wearing blue today? Yeah, I am.
Yes. So who is your campaign manager?
My campaign manager is Casper Nicholson.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Favorite drink to get on campus?
Oh, the footbridge matcha is amazing. So I know USU gets a lot of hate for their matchas. Does not apply to the footbridge one. So once this video gets uploaded, I hope people go and try it out.
Yeah. And lastly, what is your green flag and what is your red flag?
Wow, okay, that is a great question. I think my green flag is that I am a really, friendly person who loves to connect. Everyone around me, I love conversation. I love seeing people in the law annex, for example, when I'm studying, having a gap. In terms of my red flag, I think this is gonna be one of those red flags that's kind of like, is it even bad? But if you look at my Apple calendar, she's packed. So I think obviously that comes with a level of organization that I'm very proud of, having developed that through high school and university. But I love to be involved in so many things, right? Different clubs and societies and competitions and all of that. So I guess part of what I talked about in my nomination form that will be published is that organizational ability and the ability to prioritize as well. So I think I've really benefited from being involved in so many things over the past few years at university, and that does come with the skill of, being able to have a really neatly scheduled Apple calendar, and those organizational skills.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
the end of the interview.
Amazing.
Have a good
Well,
day.
you were a very approachable interviewer. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Oh my god, bro, I was so scared.